Here's something that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. The difference between broke people and not broke people usually isn't income. I know that sounds wrong, but stay with me. Person A makes $80,000 a year. Nice salary, right? And yet somehow, every single month, they're scrambling to cover rent. Credit cards always hovering near the limit. Savings account? What savings account? Person B makes 45,000, almost half as much. And somehow, they've got 500 bucks going into investments every single month. Emergency funds sitting there. No credit card debt. Sleeps fine at night. How is that possible? How does someone making almost double end up in worse financial shape? Because being broke isn't really about the money. It's about the loop. And today, I'm going to break down exactly what that loop looks like, why it's so hard to escape, and how you actually get out. So let's start with something most people don't realize. When you're broke, your brain literally works differently. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as neuroscience. There's this concept called the scarcity mindset. Researchers at Harvard and Princeton studied this extensively. And what they found is kind of terrifying. When your brain is focused on scarcity, on not having enough, it actually reduces your cognitive capacity. We're talking about the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. 13. Think about what that means. You're trying to make smart financial decisions, but your brain is operating with less processing power because it's constantly running a background program called, oh God, how am I going to pay rent? And it gets worse. Scarcity doesn't just make you dumber. It makes you more impulsive. When resources feel limited, your brain switches into survival mode. And survival mode doesn't care about your 401k. Survival mode wants the dopamine hit right now. So you're stressed about money. You had a brutal week. And instead of cooking that cheap meal at home, you order $40 worth of Uber Eats because you need it. You deserve it. And in that moment, your scarcity brain made a scarcity decision. You just made your scarcity worse. See what happened there? Being broke created stress. Stress degraded your decision making. Bad decision made you more broke. More broke created more stress. That's not a situation. That's a loop. And loops don't fix themselves. Okay, so let's talk about trap number 2. And this one hits different because it affects people who actually do start making more money. You get a raise, or a better job, or a side hustle takes off. Finally, more money coming in. Problem solved, right? 6 months later, you're still broke, maybe even more stressed than before. What happened? Lifestyle creep, also known as lifestyle inflation. It's this phenomenon where your expenses magically rise to match your income. Every single time. You were making 50K, driving a 2015 Honda, living in a decent apartment. You get bumped to 70K. Now suddenly, the Honda feels embarrassing. The apartment feels small. Your friends are going to nicer restaurants. You need to upgrade. So you get a nicer car, $300 more per month. Better apartment, $400 more per month. You're eating out more, buying nicer clothes, subscriptions you didn't have before. That 20K raise, it's gone. Actually, it's worse than gone, because now your baseline expenses are higher. You're more trapped than before. Here's the thing nobody wants to hear. If you can't build wealth on 50K, you probably won't build wealth on 100K either. The money isn't the problem. The relationship with money is the problem. And that relationship doesn't automatically change when the numbers get bigger. Which brings me to trap number 3. And honestly, this is the one I fell into for years. I used to tell myself I deserved things. I worked hard, long hours, stressful days. And at the end of a rough week, there was this voice in my head that said, you know what? You earned it. Treat yourself. Nice dinner out. New gadget I didn't need. Weekend trip I couldn't really afford. Because I deserved it. Because I worked hard. Because life is short. And look, that logic isn't entirely wrong. Life is short. You do work hard. You're not a robot. But here's what I didn't understand. That voice, that I deserve it voice, it never goes away. It never says, okay, you've treated yourself enough. It's always there. Every week. Every rough day. So you end up in this pattern where working hard becomes the justification for spending. The harder you work, the more you spend. And the more you spend, the harder you have to work. Another loop. You know what you actually deserve? You deserve to not be stressed about money. You deserve to have options. You deserve to sleep without that 3 a.m. anxiety. That's what you deserve. Not the temporary dopamine hit, the actual freedom. Trap number 4 is uncomfortable because it involves other people. And I need you to be honest with yourself here. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not your Instagram feed, your actual real life interactions. How do they handle money? If your friends are always broke, always complaining about money, but somehow always at the bar, always getting the new iPhone, always talking about how money isn't everything, that's your normal. That's your baseline. That's what feels acceptable. Humans are social creatures. We unconsciously calibrate our behavior to match our group. It's not weakness, it's evolution. We survived by fitting in with our tribe, but your tribe's financial habits become your financial habits. If everyone in your circle has car payments, a car payment feels normal. If everyone carries credit card debt feels normal. If nobody talks about investing, investing feels weird, like something rich people do. Not you, not your friends. I'm not saying ditch your friends, but I am saying you need to be aware of this influence. You need to consciously counteract it, because your environment is shaping your financial identity whether you like it or not. And by the way, this works both ways. Start consuming content from people who handle money well. Books, podcasts, YouTube channels. Make that part of your environment too. Let their habits become your normal. All right, trap number 5, and this one's kind of a callback to the first video I made about your brain and saving money, but it's worth repeating because it's so fundamental. Short-term thinking, or as the economists call it, temporal discounting. Your brain is hardwired to value now over later. $1 today feels more valuable than $5 next year, even though that makes zero logical sense. This is why you know you should save for retirement, but you don't. Why you know you should build an emergency fund, but you don't. Why you know the smart thing to do, but you do the other thing instead. Let's make it concrete. You're 25 years old. You can either have $200 to spend right now, or you can put it in an index fund. That $200, if you leave it alone, becomes roughly $3,500 by the time you're 65. Not because of some genius strategy, just time and compound interest. But your brain doesn't feel that $3,500. It feels the $200. It feels the thing you could buy today. The future is abstract. The present is real. So you spend the $200 and future you gets screwed. Again, broke people aren't making one bad decision. They're making thousands of tiny decisions where they choose present over future, and each decision feels insignificant. It's just $20. It's just $50. But they compound. Just like investments compound, except in the wrong direction. So here's the thing. I just described 5 traps. Scarcity mindset, lifestyle creep, the I deserve it trap, your environment, short-term thinking. And you might be thinking, okay, Marco, cool. Thanks for telling me all the ways I'm screwed. But here's what I really need you to understand. These traps don't exist in isolation. They feed each other. They create a system, a loop. Scarcity makes you think short-term. Short-term thinking leads to I deserve it spending. That spending keeps you in scarcity. Your broke friends normalize it. When you do make more money, lifestyle creep absorbs it, and you're right back in scarcity. Thinking short-term. Telling yourself you deserve a treat. This is why broke people stay broke. Not because they're stupid, not because they're lazy, not because they don't work hard enough, but because they're stuck in a system that reinforces itself. A loop that feels impossible to escape because every exit leads back to the entrance. And honestly, if you're in that loop, it's probably not your fault that you got there. Most people don't choose to be bad with money. They inherit it from their parents, from their environment, from a system that profits when you stay in debt and keep spending. But here's the thing. It might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility, because nobody else is going to break the loop for you. So how do you actually escape? Step 1 is awareness. And honestly, you're doing that right now. You're watching this video. You're thinking about these patterns. That's not nothing. You can't escape a trap you can't see. Step 2 is to change one thing. Not everything, one thing. And make it automatic so your willpower isn't involved. Set up an automatic transfer. The day after you get paid, $50 goes to savings, or $100, or whatever you can actually do. Make it automatic so your brain never gets a chance to spend it. You're not trying to overhaul your whole life. You're trying to create one crack in the loop. Step 3 is environment, and this is the long game. Start exposing yourself to different money mindsets. Read one book about personal finance, listen to podcasts, watch content from people who aren't broke. Not to judge yourself, but to rewire what feels normal. Step 4 is to redefine what you deserve. You deserve peace. You deserve options. You deserve to not panic when your car breaks down. That's the real treat. That's the real reward. A night out gives you 3 hours of fun. Financial security gives you a lifetime of calm. And step 5, be patient with yourself. You didn't get into this loop overnight. You won't get out overnight. But every good decision, every dollar saved, every time you resist the "I deserve it" voice, you're weakening the loop. You're creating a new pattern. Let me leave you with this. Being broke isn't a permanent identity. It's not who you are. It's a loop you're stuck in. And loops can be broken. The difference between people who stay broke and people who build wealth isn't intelligence. It isn't luck. It isn't even income. It's whether they recognize the loop and decide to do something about it. You've seen the traps now. Scarcity mindset, lifestyle creep, the deserve trap, your environment, short-term thinking. You know how they connect. You know how they reinforce each other. The question isn't whether the loop exists. It does. The question is what you're going to do about it. Are you going to keep running the same pattern and hoping for different results? Or are you going to change one thing, then another, until the loop breaks? Broke isn't a destiny, it's a loop, and you have the power to break it.